There we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the channel. And to, if I could move myself, you would see the AWC logo, but it's suggested / implied because you're here for AWC 2024's stream party. And say hi, Shannon. Say hello to the lovely people in the audience.
I was on a different tab, so I had to unmute, come back, and somehow I closed out the live stream. I was trying to get it back up again. So, hello, everyone. I'm Shannon. I write under the pen name of S.D. Huston. I'm a fantasy, romance, and YA fantasy author, writing under the pen name of S.D. Huston. I said that already. Something's like grabbing my attention, so I'm skipping around. But I do have a YouTube channel here under the name of S.D. Huston. I publish content about writing and self-publishing, and I have weekly writing sprints. Do you want me to keep going?
That's good.
Oh, that's good. Okay.
Writing and publishing is like the highlights. And so that is really what AWC, which is the conference that you started, what it's about. And so we invite people to come on and talk about a specific topic, either in writing or publishing, some aspect of either or both. And so to run up and keep people engaged and interacting with some of our previous presenters, we are doing stream parties to watch some of the other presentations that have gone through, get people comfortable, get people excited. And then we're going to ask questions like a reaction video kind of thing to, just make it more interesting and like learn from the people that are really quality content that's just sitting there waiting for your eyeballs. So that's what we thought we would like recycle a little bit. So I want to say welcome to the folks in the chat. Feels like it's been a long week. So let us know if you agree. Leslie was here early saying hello. Shannon's here with her popcorn and it looks like a fun drink.
Toasted almond.
Which is the name of a cocktail? Because when you held that up, I thought almond milk? No, it's not almond milk.
No, Kahlua, amaretto, and half and half.
I love it. I love the sound of that. And we had Devin here. I think Devin was just on your channel, so saying hello.
Hello, Devin.
Happy Friday. And I had a little prompt here. Let us know which topic you'd like to dive into next. We've got, I think, over 100 in our previous playlists for the last 2 years of the conference.
So many great ones.
If you are looking for, engagement or discussion or sort of the next level with any of those, let us know. And then we've got Rachel here. Hello. Up in the house. So we're going to have Rachel come on as a guest at the end after we're done chattering about the presentation. And then I asked Leslie if she was still at work. Oh, she's in LA traffic. All right, well, drive safely, my friend. Yeah, be careful out there. Okay, so Rachel's presentation was about titling your story. So if you want to, I will. I'm going to be the one to do this. Pop up. Oh, did I do this right? Yes, there we go. This is Rachel's presentation that we're going to be screen sharing and kind of like on one of my favorite podcasts, Crooked Media, they do something called Hey Stop, where they play the presentation and then they say, hey, stop. And they kind of shout out like an improv thing, what they want to say or ask about it. And so that's our sort of informal format for these stream parties. And just like other rules, if you've got questions, make sure to pop them in the chat and I'll star them for the end for Rachel to answer. And I think that is good and we're ready to go. So whenever you're ready, Shannon, hit the play and we'll listen to a writer's secret weapon.
And I would say, tell us what you're snacking on. If you brought a snack, I brought caramel popcorn.
Oh, and I brought a special snack. I don't know if anyone recognizes this. It's called
cheese.
No, it's not cheese. It's a case of like the packaging being actually more exciting than the treat. So that's the packaging. And, British friends are probably asleep, so they would be the ones to recognize it. But if anyone else recognizes it, let us know in the comments and I'll show it to you unwrapped next time.
Does it say dark chocolate on the top?
Yes.
Okay. All righty. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to my seminar, A Writer's Secret Weapon, Master the Art of Titling Your Story, which is a part of the 2022 Authortube Writing Conference. Before we get into the conference, I thought I would introduce myself for those of you who are new to my channel or who are finding me through the conference. So my name is Rachel Lachmansingh, and I'm a Guyanese Canadian writer from Toronto. My writing has been published by
You might want to slow it down.
I'm not hearing it. I'm wondering if yes.
Oh, I'm hearing it fine. So
okay.
Yeah.
Magazines such as Grain Magazine, the Mallet Hat Review, the Fiddlehead, and the Puritan, among others, and has been considered for various awards, including the 2022 CBC Short Story Prize, for which I was longlisted. I'm currently finishing up my BA in creative writing, where I specialize in fiction and poetry. And of course, I also run this Authortube channel. I'm really excited to be a part of the Authortube Writing Conference this year and to be presenting this seminar to you. So this seminar will cover several things. So number one, I will discuss why your title is important, a definition of what makes a powerful title, a breakdown of the different types of titles, an in-depth analyzation of various titles throughout the seminar, a deep dive of 3 published titles, 5 practical rapid-fire tips on how to construct enticing titles, and finally, 3 exercises you can try to create powerful titles. So let's jump right into it with number 1 question. Why are titles important? Titles, like book covers, are one of the first impressions a reader will make of your project. Your book or project title is also the most obvious identifier of your project. It's how people will refer to your story in conversation, online, or in reviews. You can therefore view your title as the primary face or mascot of your project. And because your title represents your project, nailing it is so important to drawing people to your work. So what are the types of titles? So I've noticed that there are 10 common types of titles. Of course, this is a non-exhaustive list, and several of the example titles could belong to multiple categories. If your title falls into multiple categories, that could indicate that it is particularly intriguing, and intrigue is a concept I will discuss later in this seminar. So the first type of title I've noticed is the interesting word or phrase or sound title. So here's a definition. An interesting word/phrase/sound title is a lyrical title that prioritizes the diction, phrasing, or sound of the title. These titles are often on the longer side, about 3+ words. So here are a couple of examples of this type of title.
Okay.
On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean
You
Vuong.
can pause it. You have
Look
the
As You Are
controls.
by...
I forgot I had the control. I was like, stop. Oh, wait, that's me. So one thing that I thought was really interesting with this is that I've just, coming into the Authortube community was coming off of me teaching college English and literature. And I actually had an advanced English class that was for juniors in one of the colleges where I taught. That there it was required that they have 3 years of English class. So in the 3rd year, I would teach writing essays with this lyrical quality. And like the things that she touches on are all part of a lecture that I used to give. And it's kind of weird how you could take one thing. I mean, they're both English, they're both writing, but it's kind of 2 different things in the mind because one's like academic and one's, creative, but they really overlap quite a bit. So I don't know. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah. There's a couple things later on that are really cross-disciplinary and I really like, so I'll point those out later. But I liked, here's like a confusion/question thing. When she was talking about things being in multiple categories, I thought, oh, are we going to be in trouble? Because if one type of title signals something to one type of audience, but also another type of audience, does that mean that we're going to get misleading and then like be in the wrong category? But that's marketing thinking, and that's not what she meant. So that's something that came up for me, but I'll tell you later when that resolves.
She doesn't talk marketing per se, but later on she does talk about how like some things are specific to genre, which genre is all about thinking, how are you going to get your book known to a certain audience, which goes into marketing from there. So,
and I watched the live chat replay as well, and there were some really good questions in this presentation. And that was one of your questions that went through. There were also several other that she answered. So just as a reminder, there is a playlist for all the previous conference talks, and you can press live chat replay, which means you get to see how people answered questions, which is like a gold mine. So don't forget, don't sleep on it. Okay.
Ruby Tando. You Too Can Have a Body Like Mine by Alexandra Kleeman. Mouthful of Birds by Samantha Schweblin. Anatomy of an Injury by Mina Wallen. A History of My Brief Body by Billy Ray Belcourt, The Female of the Species by Mindy McGinnis, and Where to Run When the Lamb Roars by me, Rachel Lachmansingh. So another type of titles are the everyday phrase title. So what is an everyday phrase title?
Okay, stop.
Well, an everyday phrase title.
Okay. So like, you too can have a body like mine, to me, doesn't sound like an interesting phrase because it's very commonplace. It feels like an everyday phrase. And so for like, I think some of these are very subjective. So I've just advised people, don't get bogged down in like, what type of title is mine? I don't know. Is it this or is it that? Like, generally speaking, these are ideas to sort of seed your brainstorming process and like patterns to recognize when you're doing market research. So you too can have a body like mine. I love when she goes into the musical details of it.
Yeah.
But it says every day to me because it's like a TV advertisement kind of sound to it. And so it's catchy for a different reason. But yeah, that was my
And I would just add a point there where you said when she goes into the musical part of it, viewers who have not seen this don't know that she does come back to some of these titles and breaks them down even further.
Yeah, it's fun.
That's what Margaret was just so we are going to see this broken down even more. But I totally agree with you. I do think that these could fall in different places, some of these titles. But I think it's a good exercise, like you said, to just kind of see. And I think it's one of the exercises she gives where she says, take all these different types of titles and make one for your book on each section. So it just kind of gives you those. Yeah. And it kind of just gives you that practice to figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. It turns a common saying into a title. And a couple of examples include What We Both Know by Fawn Parker, Never Have I Ever, which is a TV show on Netflix, Conversations with Friends by Sally Rooney, Nothing Can Hurt You by Nicola May Goldberg, and Here's to Us by Becky Albertalli and Adam Silvera. So another type of title is a theme title. So a theme title centralizes the book's overarching message and is highly poetic. So you could analyze the book's contents in the context of the title. So a few examples would be Render by Sachiko Murakami, Daddy by Emma Klein, History of Wolves by Emily Fridland, You, which is a TV show on Netflix, Bunny by Mona Awad, and Demigods by Eliza Robertson. So the next type of titles is the literal fact title. So a literal fact title uses a phrase or word that reappears multiple times throughout the story as the title. So this could be an idea or a location, and often these literal facts are highly important to the story, either conceptually or thematically or both. So a couple of examples are Made, which is a TV show on Netflix and is also a book by Stephanie Land, Slated by Terry Terry, Kamloopa, an Indigenous matriarch story by Kim Senclip Harvey, and The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. So the next type of title is a concept title. So a concept title utilizes an important or recurring concept in the story as the title. A few examples are Iron Widow by Jiran Zhezhao, My Year of Rest and Relaxation by Atessa Moshfegh, How to Keep House While Drowning by Casey Davis, Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim, Ghost Wall by Sarah Moss, and The Queen's Gambit.
Okay. So I really like these. And again, I'm going to try to get at like why I think something intrigues me. So one of the things she talks about is intrigue in a title. And I feel like some of these concepts really grab me because that intrigue is like a surprising combination. So what I said was Queen's Gambit. That to me also seems like a common phrase. And I feel like the reason I gravitate towards that as a strong title is because it's something that's niche, and it's surprising that it's leveled up to the title place, So for me, it's always like a twist or a surprising combination or a twist on something. Like How to Keep House While Drowning is How to Keep House is very common. While drowning, you're like, wait, what? So there's always this like surprise element that is the intrigue for me. So I really liked that. And so I would probably make that one of my like many different categories contribute to that quality that I really find compelling in titles.
I would say the Queen's Gambit also falls under something that she talks about later with the and titles. And then one thing I just noted here, and then maybe because this is just hard for me, but I am just so like impressed by how she can say all these names really well.
Googling the names for sure. That was well done. And then just to catch up on comments, Devin is finishing off champagne.
Woohoo!
Nice. I love it. Rachel's talking to you about your comment. That's exciting to hear because I love seeing how English and writing overlap because I studied writing. Yes. And if you're not subscribed to Rachel's channel, Rachel Writes, please do. The channel and the video are down below in the description. She recently said, what do I do now? I've met all my goals. I've like achieved all the things. And so like her videos are a little masterclass in goal setting and life expectations. And she's just really real. So definitely subscribe to her channel. Devin saying, yeah, you too can have a body like this, catchy infomercial phrase.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it's surprising that you would have that on like a literary book. That's like the little twist. Lady Jane Books is here. Hello. Loved the book You. Yeah, nice. It's a thriller. So, yeah, that makes sense because Lady Jane loves the thrillers. Devin says The House of Many Ways by Anne Jones. House of Many Ways concept. I like that as a concept. Yeah, that's intriguing too. You guys are going to be really good at the fun and games at the end of this, I can tell. Keep it up.
Which is a TV show on Netflix and a book by Walter Tevis. So the next type of title is the thing title. So the thing titles pair the word the and a noun or adjective and sometimes a verb that's important to the project. So a couple of examples are The Girls by Emma Cline, The Lightness by Emily Temple, The Beguiling by Juji Gardner, The Water Cure by Sophie McIntosh, The Roundhouse by Louise Erdrich, The Gilded Ones by Namina Forna, and The Good Bacteria by Sharon Thesson. So another type of title is the thing of thing titles. So what is it? Thing of thing titles often pair two nouns together that are separated by the word of. So a couple of examples include Rule of Wolves by Lee Bardugo, Chain of Iron by Cassandra Clare, Wings of Ebony by J.L., Ace of Spades by Farida Abike Iyamide, and House of Hollows by Crystal Sutherland. So the next type of title is a blank of blank and blank titles. So a blank of blank and blank titles slot a combination of nouns and adjectives into each blank and are really common in fantasy. So a couple of examples include A Song of Ice and Fire by George R.R. Martin, A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas, A Crew.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yeah. Yeah, so I love this presentation when it was happening at the time. And I got here and this was where a light bulb went off in my head. And I said this earlier in my live when I was talking about Ashley Devin's book. And I was, saying, hey, you guys come tonight if you can. But my book at the time, my first book, which would be my debut into fantasy romance, leaving the YA fantasy, it was just called Scales and Feathers. So I was like, I don't know what else I'm going to call it. And after this is when I came up with A Curse of Scales and Feathers. It was, I developed it right there on the spot as she was talking about it. So this was just so instrumental for me. So, which I know, Margaret, I've talked about it a lot. So,
and you mentioned it, and that was just like really inspiring. So when you start, futzing around and sort of experimenting and getting familiar with things is when you sort of strike gold. Because if you don't try, you'll never get the reward. So I love that was a success. What I was going to say is that earlier when I was thinking about, how do you do multiple categories? This is what I wanted to explain. So, for example, Song of Ice and Fire is both musically symmetrical and slotting nouns and adjectives in a way that is visually pleasing. So it fits multiple categories, and it's not going to confuse people with multiple categories because that's not the thing that I was thinking of because I had a different hat on, It's using various organizing principles to just mention different patterns in titles. So yeah, that makes total sense to me. It was just like a little light bulb moment for me. They're not mutually exclusive. So yeah, just fun.
Cruel and Faded Light by Ashley Shuttleworth, A Vow So Bold and Deadly by Bridget Kammerer, The Forest of Hands and Teeth by Carrie Ryan, and Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. So the next type of title is the fictional word title. So fictional word titles are fictional words that are unique to the author and important to the project that are then turned into a title. So for example, Truth Witch by Susan Dennard, Night Bitch by Rachel Yoder, Graceling by Kristen Cashore, Caraval by Stephanie Garber, and Legend Born by Tracy Dion. So the final type of title is the name title. So name titles are titles named after an important character in the story. So many name titles are single word titles, though others may incorporate several words that describe a character's predicament. So for example, we have Lore by Alexandra Bracken, Marlena by Julie Bunton, Eileen by Atessa Moshfegh, Jane Eyre by Charlotte Bronte, Stargirl by Jerry Spinelli, Shrek, which is of course the movie and book by William Steig, Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, Simon vs. the Homo Sapiens Agenda by Becky Albertalli, and Life of Pi by Jan Martel. You can see the bottom three examples are examples of a name title that describes a character's name as well as their predicament. So now that we've covered 10 popular title types, let's discuss what makes a powerful title. So a powerful title achieves three things. It will, number one, intrigue, number two, reveal tone, and number three, be musical. So let's discuss the first point. Powerful titles will intrigue. So perhaps the most important task a title should achieve is to intrigue a reader. A powerful title will spark interest and make a reader want to learn more about your project, preferably, of course, by reading it. So you can achieve intrigue in your title through specificity. So why does specificity matter? Creating a title that's specific to your project ensures it accurately describes the project and helps it stand out. So this does not mean your title can't have general words or elements in it, but that the title itself needs to be specific to your project. So
I know we started this and I told Margaret, I don't really have any questions, but I did just think of one.
Okay.
Which is, especially when we're thinking, I'm kind of going back to the one with the fantasy titles, a blank, a blank, a blank. And I think even you've mentioned this in some of your lives, where like, oh, here's a book that I'm reviewing. It kind of follows a similar format. When can they get tired?
Yes, and Mama Maggie is here, and she has mentioned, actually during this presentation, because it's newly in my mind watching the chat again, that like she's tired of those titles. There's just too many. There's just too many people jumping on the bandwagon, and so you just get like, shocked face, and you're just like, it doesn't mean anything new to me. It's, when does it go from genre trend and then jump the shark to, oh, another one of these, and I can't keep them separate?
Because here's one of my favorite books right now from last year, The Serpent and the Wings of Night, which is not quite the same, but it's kind of set up kind of similar format. And I can never remember this title because it's so much like so many others. I just remember Serpent and Wings. That's all I ever remember of it.
Yeah. 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 There's one, there's one later that made me think, oh, what was that title that I really liked the look of and the feel of, like the audio oral feel of, and it was Ink and Bone. And it's not as popular as some, but I mean, it's like, it's a good selling book. And I thought, what is that? I think it's the hard sounds and the simplicity and the pairing, but yeah, definitely intrigue and definitely specificity. So like, we've already got 1 point covered, but yeah, it's getting you thinking about all these things. So
yeah, for sure.
So let's discuss two types of specificity that will apply to titles. The first is specificity of theme. So let's define specificity of theme. Titles can be specific by calling back to your project's particular theme. So for example, let's take a look at my title, Where to Run When the Lamb Roars, which is the title of one of my published short stories, which you can read for free in the Thames Review. So this title of my short story that follows an unsuspectingly homicidal teenage girl specifically describes the central theme of the story. What happens when what is stereotypically seen as good ends up being bad? Another example of specificity of theme is The Girls by Emma Cline. So this title is specific, despite being more general than my, Lachmansingh's, title. And that's because The Girls describes the specific central conflict of Cline's book, the narrator's experience of her own girlhood and the girl
I'm glad you're on the same tab so you can see when I put a hand up so I don't have to like yell. Okay, so here I had a question because without reading the back cover copy, how would I know it describes this central conflict? If we're just judging by the title, The Girls is rather boring to me. I haven't read Emma Cline, so it's no judgment of her writing or anything. But The Girls, to me, is like, is it going to be like The Virgin Suicides? Is it going to be like Ramona Quimby? I don't know. I can't tell unless I get a little more detail. So for me, I'm going to ask Rachel, like, are you encompassing the back cover copy when you look at a like whole package, or is there something I'm missing judging just the title here? So
I don't know the book either, but based off of like the narrator's experience of her own girlhood, I would assume based on that Emma Cline must be well known in certain book circles. And just the name might be enough to pull it in, but I don't know.
The author name. She doesn't even go into the title plus author, because if it was like The Happy Playdate by Stephen King, that would hit different.
Yes, it would.
Yeah, that's true. I hadn't considered that the author name would contribute to how the title hits. Yeah. Okay. Maybe that's it. Maybe that's a good point. So just putting that out there. Okay.
Girlhood of others. So the second type of specificity that will pertain to titling is specificity of diction. So not only can titles be specific through theme, they can also be specific through diction, which is the individual words a writer chooses to construct their writing. So for example, we have On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous by Ocean Vuong. This title contains several specific words. Vuong could have titled this book On a Planet We're Pretty, but specifically states that on Earth, we're briefly gorgeous. So Earth specifies planet, gorgeous specifies what we are, and briefly specifies for how long we'll be gorgeous. So the second element of powerful titles is that powerful titles will reveal tone. So a powerful title will also reveal the tone of your project, and in some titles, a revelation of tone is more obvious, but in others, tone might be subtler. This is going to vary project by project. Either way, powerful titles reveal tone because they provide a reader a sense of the type of book or project they'll be reading. So here are a few examples of titles.
I just thought of this one. So in terms of powerful titles revealing tone, how do you think your books do? Like, because I know you've said you had different feedback on some of your earlier titles and later titles, and I think about mine, and I think, well, my fifth one, definitely I was unhappy with, but I couldn't figure out how to fix it. My other ones I'm more happy with in terms of conveying tone. But like on this rubric, how do you think, or how do you feel you did looking back?
I think it did okay.
Yeah.
I'd say well. I mean, I feel that my first book title, Blood of the Lily, from my YA fantasy series, could almost sound like it's a horror title, but I think paired with the cover, it makes it clear that it's not horror. But other than that, I think Soul of a Rose, Tears of Marigold, I think and then of course you actually have something that's not talked about is series titles, because my series title is on my book and it's Clash of Goddesses, which then would automatically, I feel that would automatically put someone in the mind frame of fantasy at that point. So,
or mythology. Yeah. And mine, so let's see. I started out with sort of a pattern for standalone books that were not related. So we've got Memories Hostage, we've got Dulcie's Legacy, and Memories Hostage is a mystery. It does sound more like a thriller, and that's kind of the vibe I was going for. Dulcie's Legacy, I feel like just really weak. It's YA, it's got supernatural, it's got time travel. I feel like Dulcie is not a common name, and so people are like wondering about that first of all, and it's not intriguing, it's more off-putting, but that's the name I chose for the character. So I
like Dulcie, but Dulcie's Legacy, I didn't get what her legacy, I didn't get like a feel of a legacy being built from the story. I mean, there was something that was done, but I don't know. I like Dulcie, but Dulcie did make me think of like sweet because it's kind of like a root word for sweet.
Dolce. Yeah.
In a lot of different languages.
Yeah.
So then I thought maybe something sweet, but of course, I think it's the book that we read for the Booktubers Club. I didn't understand how legacy.
Yeah, the timing thing, because it's like she
Yeah.
goes back
in time
and like changes history and all that kind of stuff.
But I didn't see how that. I don't know. I just felt like maybe something better would, but I didn't know what would work honestly because I don't. But I didn't have that much of an issue with that, to be honest. I thought it was fine.
Yeah, but hearing this, like the tone and musicality, which is coming up, could have been improved. And then we've got the caning, which I think is pretty sharp, with the grasping root. So
Dulcie's legacy is musical, I think, because you have this Dulcie legacy.
Yeah, it's asymmetrical, but it does repeat.
So
maybe it like diffuses. I don't know. We can think about that. But yeah, if you guys have thoughts about your titles, drop it in the chat. We can talk about them. But just like thought it would be an interesting introspective moment.
That reveal tone. First up, we have A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Maas's title, at first glance, indicates the tone of the book to come. The words thorns and roses conjure images of romance with potential danger looming beneath. Of course, a rose is a very romantic image, whereas a thorn is something associated with a rose that can harm people. Next, we have Legend Born by Tracy D.
Something else I just think about this, thorns and roses, thinking about this being romantic, but something, possibly danger. But thorns comes first, not roses.
Yeah.
So I think even like the order.
So you get tampon first and then yeah. No, I agree. That's a good point. And then I was like, what about the tendency of fans for those titles? Because everyone's abbreviating them instead of saying it all out. And like, do you think of that? Do you think of that when you title it? Like, should that enter into your thinking?
They never did until I wrote my fantasy romance. And then people were trying to port it. And I'm like, oh, I guess I fell into ACOTAR realm, because it's hard to remember and it's hard to remember all the different, prepositions, conjunctions, which article was used, which,
Yes. Yeah. Maggie says, I'm struggling because the Relic of Time War series prequel quartet are all the Huntsman's something with H, while the Relics of Time War main series has many names. Oh, interesting. I mean, you could just basically treat it as a separate series that's in the same world, because that's a lot of books. The Huntsman's H? Okay, well, we'll have to get more on that in a second.
Yawn. The combination of the word legend, which holds epic or fantastical connotations, with born, which nods to literature tropes like The Chosen One, suggests the book will be some sort of fantasy. Finally, we have Never Have I Ever, which is a Netflix TV show. Never Have I Ever is a popular game teenagers play, which indicates the show will be contemporary, since Never Have I Ever is a contemporary game. Perhaps a coming-of-age element may be present as well, since this game appeals mostly to teens. So the final element of powerful titles is that powerful titles will be musical. Powerful titles will also be musical, whether that means they lean toward poetic or whether that means sound, and even the simplest of forms is paid attention to. So musicality, the rhythm of words in a sentence / how the words sound or even look on a page, can be an overlooked aspect of titles. Writers may not consider how their titles sound.
Okay, so this is where I had a question for you, Shannon, which was about cover design. Because when Rachel says how things look on a page, even, I thought, oh, it's visual musicality as well as oral musicality. And I thought that was really cool. So like when you are designing a cover, I assume, because I don't do this, that when you're looking at it, you're like, okay, if we're going to have the cap letter here and it's going to be matched by this word, that has to come down and that element has to complement it to be symmetrical, and then I have to center this and the spacing has to be this. And so like you're basically looking at it like a song with balanced elements. So
Mhm.
I was like, it's. But what if the visual musicality is at war with the ear musicality? Like, I don't know. Did you consider that when you were looking at your covers, the like how it sounds to how it looks?
Yes, because I wanted that balance. So, and it was something I actually struggled with my first series because I have Blood of the Lily and Tears of the Marigold, but Soul was of a rose, not of the rose. And the way that was going to look with an A versus a the in my title, and because mine's a title cover, right? It doesn't have images other than some flowers on it. So that I struggled with that, but I just could not get myself to call it Soul of the Rose. It was Soul of a Rose to me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was something I struggled with when I made those covers.
But I did not notice that before you just said it, actually, because it flows so well.
Yeah.
The lily, a rose. Like I didn't recognize, it didn't jump out at me that they were different. So you achieved, I think, your like balance really well there.
Yeah, it was something I really worked on.
Yeah, Clash of the Goddesses. It's beautiful covers with the flowers and feathers on each title. Yes. On each cover, sorry, yeah. Covers need to look like art, postcards, movie posters, etc. Yeah. And the last word gives the emotional weight of the main character in each book.
I think she's talking about my books.
Okay.
I think
Yeah,
maybe.
I think so.
Oh, because the last word in my titles were all the names of the girls and the flower that they were named for.
Okay. All right. And then she also Maggie gave the H's: Huntsman's honor, Huntsman's heart, Huntsman's hatred, Huntsman's horror. That is not easy to say. That's got to be easier visually. Yeah. And because honor doesn't have the H sound, like you're diverging. That is a difficult one because it's going to look the same, but it's not going to sound the same. I feel like the title of my book would be bland if it weren't for the art, says Devin. Devin's book just came out, The Witch's Crystal. That is probably a title of other works because it does sound pretty open to other people, a witch, a crystal. But yeah, the art on the cover is pretty cool. So is it too early for regret 3 days after your launch?
Because she just launched on the 12th, or yeah.
Yeah, the same week. Yeah. Okay. I'm ready.
But it also captures, I don't know so much like the theme, but the Witch's Crystal is the entire book. They are going after this Witch's Crystal. Did I say that right? Sometimes I can't hear how I'm sounding.
Close enough.
So they're going at, that's the whole thing. That's the whole mission, because this is going to be what meets everybody's motivation, all the characters' motivation in the book, is to get this Witch's Crystal and use it. So it's very fitting for the book, I think.
Nice.
Okay. Because this is a subtler but critical aspect of title construction. But just as many writers and readers love beautiful turns of phrase because well-constructed language is memorable, titles too can be memorable through syntax. So here are a few examples of titles that are musical. First, we have Rule of Wolves by Leigh Bardugo. So in Bardugo's title, variations of an O sound are used equal distances from each other. So I've written out where you can see that sound, Rule of Wolves. So the OO sound in rule and the UL sound in wolves. Rule contains a harder O sound, oo, where wolves contains a softer O sound, The inclusion of both creates consistency and symmetry in the sound, since both words include an O sound in the middle of the word and are one syllable each. This makes the title feel satisfying to say because musically it is balanced. On the other hand, a title like Rule of Canaries is less balanced because there isn't sound consistency between rule and canaries. The dominant sound of rule is oo, and the dominant sound of canaries is eh. Syllabically, the two words are also imbalanced, with rule at one syllable and canaries at three. So the next example is You Too Can Have a Body Like Mine by Alexandra Kleeman. So Kleeman's title is comprised of mostly one-syllable words. No two words in this phrase start with the same letter, which means there's an instant variation of sound between each word. This creates a staccato effect when we read the title aloud. And as you can see, I've underlined the first letter of each word and they're all different. We have a Y, T, C, H, A, B, L, and M, which all make different sounds. It would make a Y, T, K, H, A, B, L, and M sound. So there's quite a bit of variety. The only word that is more than one syllable here is body, which is a great choice because reserving more than one syllable for this word calls emphasis to it. A reader can easily parse that body is the most important word in this title, as it contains a central image. So now let's do a title analyzation. Now that we've covered why titles are important, what the types of titles are, and what makes a powerful title, let's analyze 3 different titles. The first title I'll be analyzing today is Daddy by Emma Cline. So, Daddy by Emma Cline is a collection of short stories examining, among other things, masculinity. This is an example of a thematic title that is effective because of its simplicity. So, is it intriguing? For me, this title is immediately intriguing because the word daddy culturally has so many different meanings. In an interview for the Los Angeles Times, Klein discusses the title and says, quote, "I was talking to a friend, and I think as a joke, he said, 'Why don't you call it daddy?' I like the vulgarity, but also the innocent version of the word, that it has all these double meanings." End quote. So does this title reveal tone? From the offset, we get an idea from the title that the stories in this collection will be examining larger societal issues, as noted in the back jacket summary. To use a culturally controversial word so boldly as a collection title perhaps gives insight into what the stories will be like: honest, sometimes uncomfortable, and thought provoking. So, is this title musical? Since this is a one word title, the choice of that one word matters. Here, the title is 2 syllables, with the Y in daddy elongating the title into an echo. So, in contrast, father, which could have been an alternate title, has harsher sounds. The sharper sound from the R comes to mind, and that sound blunts the word's ring. So, the next title I'll be analyzing is The Good Bacteria by Sharon Thesson. So, The Good Bacteria by Sharon Thesson is a collection of poetry. And this is an example of a The Thing title and works because of its surprising specificity. So, is this title intriguing? What stands out here is the use of the word the that naturally gives the words good bacteria more authority on the page. The use of the makes the good bacteria seem important in some way, and I immediately want to learn more about why. So, does this title reveal tone? I immediately feel a sense that this collection will be more of a serious reflection rather than a lighthearted collection through its simple statement. For example, had the title been The Fun Bacteria, I might have a very different idea of what kind of poems I'll be reading. An indicator of what's to come is also the simplicity of the title. It isn't too ornamented or too long, which makes me wonder if the poems inside will also be simpler in nature. So finally, is this title musical? So I would say yes. The variation of length between the word good and bacteria that both end on relatively soft sounds, ud and ah, rings after the title is read. This is an example of a more asymmetrical title that is balanced because of the sounds included in the words.
Yeah.
So finally, I'll be doing a title analyzation of one of my titles, which is The Light When You Close Your Eyes by me. This is an example of an interesting phrase / word / sound title, which is my personal favorite type of title. The Light When You Close Your Eyes is a flash fiction story of mine that was published several years ago. The piece follows a vengeful woman seeking revenge. So is it intriguing? I'm interested by the image it describes, but I'm just a touch confused by what that image is exactly. I think that confusion is because of the word light. What light exactly appears when you close your eyes? Would that refer to colors? Or is it supposed to be a more literal light? I might slash the phrase the light altogether and retitle the piece to When You Close Your Eyes, which is thematically more relevant as well to the piece. Does this title reveal tone? This title feels serious to me rather than lighthearted, which is accurate to the story. I'm not getting a hint at any playfulness in the title, which is also an indicator. So is this title musical? In my opinion, When You Close Your Eyes is musical, since each final sound of these words sounds soft, perhaps excluding the or sound in your, which is a little bit harsher, but not as harsh, in my opinion, as an sound. It's a bit wider because of the O, so the your, it's or instead of For me, I'd swap out the light for something more specific or remove the light, since that phrase lengthens the title unnecessarily. So we've come to the part of the seminar where I discuss.
I know we're running close to our time here, but so the longer titles, and here's another book marketing question. So obviously your title, you want it to reflect the vibe, the tone, the themes, the genre. But when you're also checking whether or not it's going to be a good selling title, does a longer title help people find it faster? I mean, part of it's going to be your SEO work, but like when I think of long titles, the first one that comes to me is that Swedish one, the 100-year-old man who stepped out a window and like never came back or whatever, because that was the first time I'd seen such a long title. And so I'm wondering, like, if someone types in The Girls, they're not going to find Emma Klein. If someone types in Daddy, they're probably going to find Sylvia Plath. Like, why? Like, is there a case? Is there like a little bit of weight to people who are doing not only more specific for intrigue, but like longer titles because it'll make you more easily findable? I don't know.
So my thought on that would be, the longer the title, the more likely you're to forget parts of it. And Amazon is not very good if you forget parts of it. Like even me trying to find The Witch's Crystal by Devin Gambrell, right? Just came out. I put in The Witch's Crystal and I forgot to put the apostrophe S and could not find it. So then I went there and put an S. It still couldn't find it. I had to go add the apostrophe in order to find the book.
That's
so
disappointing.
Yeah. And so I'm like, okay, the longer the title, the more likely you're to leave out a word. Unless it's a very popular book, it's probably not going to come up if you can't remember all of it.
That's true.
I'm saying this from my perspective where I don't have the best memory. And so I could tell you last year when I really loved this book and I tried to search it by Serpent and Wings, I couldn't find it. Now I can search by Serpent and Wings and find it, even on a different browser, because it's become very
algorithm. Yeah.
Because, she was picked up by a traditional publishing house, and this is now traditionally published versus indie, which is how it started. This is the indie version. You can't get the paperback right now. So
you think it's because they did more SEO work, or do you think it's because
it became popular?
Okay, so it's the algorithm rewarding, page rank or whatever.
On the other side, like you said, if something is a short title like Daddy or The Girls, I think you're going to come up with lots of results. So you would need something specific that is not a common phrase.
So that argues for fictional words like Legendborn or, Lightbringer or Raybearer, those things like that. The Light When You Close Your Eyes sounds like a murder mystery or psychological thriller.
So I would say, but I want to say, because I was actually about to pause before you said a pause. When you close your eyes, to me, sounds boring. I like the light. The light,
right? You need a twist. You need a surprise to have that intrigue. Yeah.
But to me, the light, I don't know if it's so much like thriller, but it made me think of, what is the light that you see when you close your eyes? Well, it's either you have a lot of sunlight, you're not sleeping, or you're heading to death and you're seeing the light at the end of the tunnel. So it's one of those two things is what I was thinking.
Yeah.
Which still gives you like, okay, this is either going to be a happy story or maybe it's a death story, but maybe that could still be happy depending on where the story goes.
Could be. Devin says, hard to remember a longer title, but a one or two words can be vague. Trying to find a happy medium can be difficult. Yeah. Right.
That's what I was trying to say. Yep. Exactly.
Yeah. Maggie's got the classic bookseller dilemma. I don't remember the color, but the title, but the cover was red. Yeah. That's fun. Okay, go ahead.
We actually have like three or 4 minutes left on this because the last 10 minutes is
live
question.
Chat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Question and answer.
Gotcha.
Rapid fire tips for creating enticing titles. Now that we've covered why your title is important, a definition of what makes a powerful title, a breakdown of the different types of titles, and an in-depth analyzation of various titles, here are 5 ways you can construct better titles. So number 1 is to practice titling as you would practice writing. Just as writing is a skill that develops over time, titling is a skill that needs practice. Make it a habit to frequently brainstorm titles. So here's a tip from me. If you're writing a novel, I recommend titling your chapters. You can do this just as an exercise. You don't have to keep them. I recommend this because this requires you to practice titling more frequently as you're more likely to finish a chapter on a quicker basis, as opposed to when you finish a book every few months or every few years. So my second rapid fire tip is to get specific to your project. As noted in the intrigue section of this seminar, specificity is a great way to make your title stand out. However, don't limit yourself only to specificity in general, but get specific to your project. What diction is relevant to your project? What themes appear in your work? So my third tip is to avoid extraneous prepositions. So what is a preposition? Prepositions, as defined by Grammarly, quote, indicate relationships between other words in a sentence, end quote. While prepositions are an important aspect of communication, having too many in a small place can cause clutter that is especially noticeable in a title. So here are a few examples of prepositions from Citation Machine. About, above, across, after, ago, at, below, by, down, during, for, from, in, into, off, on, over, past, since, through, to, under, until, up, and with. So here's a tip from me. My rule of thumb is to limit myself to 2 prepositions per title, though I honestly prefer to stick to just 1. So my next tip is to brainstorm titles for one project in each title type. In the seminar, I discussed 10 common.
Okay. So before the prepositions, in the last point, we had track the symbols and themes in your work so that you can get specific, right? And this is sort of my starting place for whenever I brainstorm titles, is kind of thinking, okay, like what are the keywords that pop up when I think of the characters and the places and the action and the themes and that kind of thing. I assume that's how most people do it. But I mean, I've been part of people brainstorming names for companies, and I've been part of people brainstorming names for books. But maybe it's different. I don't have a wide sample size. So like, how do you brainstorm, Shannon, and like people in the chat?
So my first book was called Lily and the Leprechaun. And my girlfriend from college, we both graduated with our writing degree together. And she read it and she was like, your title's boring, but the rest is okay.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, Lily and the original Leprechaun, because we were watching the originals. My husband and I were watching the originals of the vampire show on TV.
Okay.
And so, and Lou, the god in the series, in Tuatha De Danann, the Irish mythology, was possibly the original leprechaun. So, and she was like, no, that's still boring. I dreamt Blood of the Lily, and it was perfect because the book is all about her trying to get her sister back, which is blood, and it was perfect. Scales and feathers, all I did was just pick an attribute of my 2 characters, because I was like, okay, it's fantasy romance. There's 2 characters. There's a pairing. Scales for him, feathers for her, scales and feathers. All right, that's good. We'll just go with that. It wasn't until this presentation that I had a title.
Yeah.
Titles to me are hard.
Yeah. I really was intrigued by the titling the chapters exercise, because I have never been a chapter title person. Like, I don't pay attention to them when I read, and I figured that's just too much. Titles are already difficult, so putting myself through that for each chapter would like kill me. Yeah. But Rachel brings up a good point. Like, that's practice.
Yeah. But I'm like, do I want to go through that practice? I'd rather just write.
Right. And then Devin saying my chapters are locations. Yeah.
My title chapters are the names of the POV character.
He says, I title chapters in some series, but not all. To be honest, coming up with chapter titles is hard, and it's really hard to not make them spoilery. That's another point we haven't even touched, is like the spoiler aspect. That's a good one. Okay, we'll store that one away. Devin's, pointing to that. That's a good one. Jordan Mahoney is here. Hello, Jordan. Banameka. And I'm not sure what that refers to. Sorry. Hard enough time with book titles. Yay. Hey, Devin. Wait, that was the one I was going to show. You and Miss K are warriors for talking about burnout on your channel. Yeah, that's great.
It's real.
Okay. I think that's good. I've got 2 more things to comment on, and we're 5 minutes before. Do we want to bring Rachel on so she can see the thrilling conclusion with us? You're muted, Shannon. Rachel's in the back room. That's why I was just offering up. If you're ready, we can pop you on.
Well, yeah, we can pull up. So we had less than a minute left on the video.
Cool. Okay, so we can all watch it together.
Hello.
Hello. Hold on.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I can hear you. I don't see
Okay,
you.
great.
Is she behind the screen?
Yeah, it's the layout. Hold on. Add item.
It's the
Camera
ghost of the room.
spot. There we go. Okay. I didn't like plan this beforehand because I didn't have your camera slot. Save, update. Boom.
Oh, there I am. Hi. Oh, that's so cool. That's so cool.
Welcome.
Hi.
Great presentation.
This
We're
is
enjoying
so
the heck out of it.
fun. Yeah, I've loved it. It's really great to hear you guys chat. You know,
how we
as I
struggle.
talk to.
Yes, yes. So thrilling conclusion, the last like couple minutes. Oh, and did you bring a snack to share?
Yes, I have pretzels.
Pretzels. Nice.
Giant
for
bag
any-
of pretzels.
And for
Did you-
anyone wondering what my thing was, it was a
Yeah.
10x tea cake. So that is the mystery that is in there.
Is this a cake inside?
Yeah, it's like, here, let me,
Eat it on screen.
there we go.
Oh,
It's
say
like
like-
kind of like a s'more,
okay.
but it's marshmallow fluff.
That looks so good.
Yeah, it does. Especially with dark chocolate.
So let's get the last minute and then we can dive into our question.
Common types of titles. Here's a recap. Interesting words / phrases / sound titles, everyday phrase titles, theme titles, literal fact titles, concept titles, the thing titles, thing of thing titles, a blank of blank and blank titles, fictional word titles, and name titles. An easy way to practice your titling skills is to write titles for the same project in each distinct style. This way, it's easier to see the difference between each title type and to decide which type most resonates with your project. So my final tip is to track recurring images, symbols, or words in your project and translate them into titles. So while writing or rereading your work, make note of recurring images, symbols, or words in your project and turn them into titles. This is a great place to start if you have no title ideas at all, since you'll be directly working with your source content rather than brainstorming from nothing. So if you'd like to practice your titling skills, here are a couple of titling exercises. The following exercises can be done one after the other or individually. You can take however much time you think you'll need to complete each exercise, but I personally wouldn't recommend taking longer than 20 minutes per exercise. I'd honestly recommend trying to do each in about 5 minutes and then moving on to the next one. That's because sometimes going through exercises on a tight time limit can lead to fun surprises. So my first exercise for you is to write down a list of your top 3 favorite titles from other authors. In one paragraph, describe elements you like, whether that's the specificity, the musicality, or the imagery, and try to hit at least one of those elements in one of your titles. So my second exercise is for you to make note of your current working titles. Answer the following questions according to what you've learned in this seminar. Is it intriguing? Does it reveal tone? And is it musical? So the final exercise, exercise number 3, is to identify a theme from your project and extrapolate that into an image or phrase. So congratulations, you've made it to the end of my seminar, A Writer's Secret Weapon, Master the Art of Titling Your Story. I hope this seminar was helpful and that you have some new ideas on how to create enticing titles. Now is the time of the seminar where you can leave questions for me.
All right. Yay.
Awesome.
So thank you for coming on to do
Yes.
this little Q&A session. We had some questions, but again, reminder, people in the chat, this is when you should get in your questions for Rachel. If you've got specific questions about your title and like, is it symmetrical? Does it have musicality? Does it have intrigue? Pop it in and we'll be happy to toss it around and, I don't know, ruin your dreams.
Oh my goodness, Margaret.
Sorry, spit take. And we can get big. So yeah, we don't do that anymore. But yeah, and just as a side note, sometimes we'll make meta comments about the presentation. For anyone thinking of doing presentations for the conference, ending with homework is 100% awesome because nerds love homework. And like it's just another way for people to like practice what you're actually teaching about. So I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, it was. So I can't tell you how thankful I was for your presentation. It just,
I'm so happy to hear that.
it's named my whole series.
Oh my gosh, that's so exciting for me. I
Yeah.
always get a lot of questions about titles, so I poured it all into that presentation. And this is the one that I still refer people out to. It was like a great conference to be a part of because I think I
Yay.
put all the info I have in there.
Any updates, like any further titles you've worked on where you've like discovered a new sort of light bulb or anything?
I mean, what I was thinking of, I heard you guys talking about like series titles. I hadn't thought of that. And I think that's so interesting because I have a giant series. You'd think I would have thought about that, but it's something that I'll consider like in the future. In terms of like titles that like if I've discovered anything, I think I've discovered a love. I think I talked about them in the presentation for like one word titles, especially ones that are very like specific and like unexpected thematically. I love kind of weaving the different styles of titles together. So like, having the thematic title and like the one word title together.
Different
I
categories.
think the combo is very fun. I'm a poet, so I find weaving all of the little things in language very exciting. So yeah, those are just a couple new ideas about titles.
I think it shows when poets choose titles because poets have to be so careful about each individual word choice that like the titling game is perfect for them because you got so much layered into each choice. Like,
yes.
I've written a ton of poems and all my poem titles are my first line.
I love that technique too. I think we need to bring that into fiction. I think.
Yeah, here we go.
Because it's very common in poetry to do a bleeding title where it's the first line is the title, and then sometimes you might not even repeat it. You'll just go straight into the rest of the poem. So it's really cool, and I want to see it more in prose writing because I think it's neat. I've been trying or meaning to do one with fiction, like flash fiction. It's been interesting to play with.
I was going to say that technique would probably work better for a shorter fiction format.
Yes. I would love to see someone like write a novel that way.
Yeah, right.
It would be very cool. But
I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan
of a dark and stormy night.
Of the lines composed in the fields in front of Tintern Abbey type approach. So like, this is where I wrote it and when I wrote it. There you go. Make it easy. Take it easy on yourself. Okay, so no new titles. What about the surprise? So what I was sort of getting at, one of my first questions was like, to me, the intrigue and the reveal of tone both have like an element of surprise that I want. What do you think? Is that like another category or is that just like subsumed into the intrigue, you think?
Like the surprise titles?
Like what I think is intrigue maybe is like have an element of surprise or a twist or like an unconventional coupling, and so that is really what gets my attention.
Yes,
but it's not separate.
I think I love titles that are anything that's sort of unexpected at all. I think that's a really great way to do it. I see it a lot in like the genres that I write. A lot of literary fiction. I'll see a lot of titles that sort of combine words. I'm looking at my shelf trying to see if there are any.
Wait.
I don't think off the top of my head, but I love when writers can sort of like subvert our expectations in like combining words that might be, that element of surprise. I think that's a very exciting way. It's probably the way that I title things most is like looking at pairing words that feel a little unconventional. So that could be like another type of title. I mean, there are like infinite amounts of titles. The ones that are in the video is just sort of the ones that I was able to think of at the time. So I think continuing to hunt for them and like look at how title trends work. I mean, I think I mentioned a blank, like those were really like popularized with like ACOTAR, right? Yeah. But before then in the publishing industry, I don't think you saw them as much. So even like with particularly like influential authors can like change. Yeah, I can. Yes, before that. Yeah, I think that might have been the first one. But I think the authors can really also lead the conversation in terms of like what's like a new title. Because I think even like, older books might not necessarily have like a title might not have been as important because the industry was different too. So like looking how the industry changes and what new creativity comes with like new writers. It's cool.
We have Alora Nettles in the house. Hello. She says, I would love help with my title for my slightly futuristic reverse cannibal book, which I'm not sure what that means. My working title is Anthropophagus. I don't know if that's how you say it. I'm not good with the biology, like root words. So I know it means something that eats humans. Hard to spell and maybe difficult to look up.
Does reverse cannibal means you eat yourself?
Reverse,
I'm trying to figure out what reverse cannibal.
I don't know. I think we'll get more information, right?
Very intrigued.
Anthropophagus. So what's the po syllable for? I like the made up word, the fictional word, and we've got some hard sounds. It might stop people because it's so unfamiliar. I don't know. You have to consider your audience.
I think in this case, her name would sell it more than the title.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool title too. I think the length might be something to think about, like maybe the complexity of the syllables. Looking at that.
Mm-hmm. Stella Nicole, hello. I have a medical degree and would have had to think how to spell it to search it. I love the idea of your story, Laura. Yeah.
I want to know what reverse cannibal means.
Yeah.
Flesh feeder. I like that, the flesh feeder.
I don't know.
You've got the alliteration there. Or just flesh feeder.
Yeah, without the. I enjoy hidden titles, like when you get to the end of the book and you're like, oh, that's why it's titled that. AKA my second series. Dun, dun, dun. Drum roll, whatever that would be. Yeah, that's nice. Oh, Stella says, flesh feeder is cool. It's got good mouth feel. Mm-hmm. No pun intended.
That should be the headline when you're trying to market it. Flesh feeder, it's got a good mouth feel.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty golden right there. Laura says the main character lives in a bunker in the woods of California. He can feed chunks of himself to others to transform them into man-eating monsters.
Ooh.
Whoa!
I like that.
Phage. I don't know. What do you think?
I think flesh feeder really works for this too.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think I think it would be it would capture my attention. I'm not sure if I would know how to say it like right off the bat, but I think it's like eye-catching as a title.
Yeah. Nice. We also had a question that you got during the presentation. Maybe you've had some more time to like digest this. What about subtitles? As Devin is asking. So we talk about series titles and then subtitles. So often like longer explanation. It's an opportunity for people to give a little bit more like direction or indication of like maybe the genre or where it is in the series, for example.
It's been really popular for indie authors to have a subtitle that includes tropes and or genres in order to get found on Amazon.
Oh yeah. Well, if you're talking about Amazon titles, they'll like put everything with the kitchen sink in the subtitle, and I think that's like sort of hacking. That's not really
even book marketing companies, because I went to a few webinars last year that were free from book marketing companies, and they even suggest that you do that. Mm-hmm. That you have your trope and or a genre in there, and they suggest both if you can get both without being too long.
Right, where you're like The Witch's Crystal, a romance fantasy that
like
is
mine is enemies to lovers,
portraying
fantasy romance is what mine are.
Yeah.
But I've noticed like with literary fiction, often a subtitle is a novel.
Yeah. I think with the literary fiction also, I don't know if I see subtitles as much. I think it depends on the genre. I think I've seen some subtitles in like plays. So that seems to be, it depends on the genre. I didn't know about like the indie authors using subtitles. I think that's really cool. Yeah, I think a subtitle, it really is just like that little addition, but I have not really thought like, series titles, subtitles, those are things almost like need a part 2. Like,
yeah, right.
Think about it. Do some research.
Next year, you're going to come back and do part 2. Let's have you back on.
Oh, that would be fun.
Yeah.
We've got Devin asking, does it have some humor, Laura? So you can have the character name, flesh feeder, maybe. Even something as a single word like mouthful would be. I'm curious what that is about. It doesn't give a lot away though. Yeah. Mouthful or mouth feel. Like depending on how creepy you want it. And I know you like it creepy, Laura. So.
You'd be mouthful and still market it. It's a mouthful of a mouthfeel.
Mouth. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Not humorous, she says. He has to go on a rescue mission to save his niece from a government facility. Even his dog is a zombie after biting his leg once. Wow. There's a lot of aspects to try to cover in a title. So you have to like choose. That's the hardest part, I think. I mean, for me, choosing is always the hardest part of life. So yeah. Any recommendations on that? So like, part of the process. So if you brainstorm, you've got your symbols, you've got your chapter titles to sort of give you a base to pull from. And then maybe you get to a point where you're getting a group of beta readers together, or, your critique partner, and you sort of bounce your ideas off them. Then how do you choose? Do you do like a what's it called? The ad companies, they do like a feedback group. I forget what that's called.
A test
Whatever.
group?
No, there's like a ad company, Mad Men kind of term. Anyway.
I think when it comes to titles are like the trickiest part. I know it's very hard. That's why they're quite like mystical to sort of crack. I think it really comes down to you having to decide how you see the story itself. So if like the story like relies a lot on like the concept or something, like for example, like the Hunger Games, I can't see any other title for that book, right? Because it really relies on that concept being like the central force of that entire book and the entire series. So having like the actual Hunger Games like in the title is really important. But when I like in my genre work, when I write literary, I like think mostly like kind of poetically, kind of thematically. I don't often think about other things, because really when I'm writing literary, it's all about how it sounds. And so that's how I would decide, okay, I don't want to go with just like naming like the concept of this story for this. I want to go like a way that feels like it suits the story itself. So it can be hard to decide. I think if somebody's having trouble deciding, I would pool the ideas. And then when I have trouble making decisions about something, I will just like get other people to decide. And usually when I ask other people, I then know like which one I want.
Yeah, it's like the coin flip. You know what you want as soon as the coin is in the air.
Yeah. So, and then also it depends on where you're publishing. I know in traditional publishing, the publishers can have some influences on titles too and marketability. So it's one of those things where I kind of have one, I feel good about it, and then if it changes, it changes. But keeping an open mind, but also being decisive in the beginning. I know it sounds contradictory.
Balance. Yeah. No, I think I asked like 3 different people about the keening, and they all were like, I don't really know. And I still was like, but it's the spirit of the novel. So I mean, I don't have anything else that is as forceful. And so I just went with it. So yeah, go with your gut.
Mm-hmm.
Maggie says, my subtitle for Cat Lady was Pharaoh's famous fungus killed us all, which was a spray painted warning seen throughout the book as the characters traveled through the zombie apocalypse.
Yeah, but Cat Lady was not the name of that book. It was How to Survive a Zombocalypse with a Cat Lady or something like that.
Yeah.
The name of the title. So that's a really long title.
Yeah, I love it.
I love it. I do love it too.
Yes.
So I asked my question.
Yes, thank you.
Do you see a time when some of these conventions that you're talking about may have a time limit, like it's not valid anymore?
Yeah, I mean, I think with every trend in like publishing, like you guys were talking earlier about the blank and blank titles. I know a lot of people are sick of those titles, but they still continue to be popular. And honestly, I like them. I think that as long as the words are quite interesting, I think if they kind of use like phrases that are kind of like more frequently seen, like constantly in fantasy, it might be harder to stand out. But I think with like trends, there always is a time when they might kind of fall out of fashion. But I think that's where the title it almost is like the title is like inextricable from the book. That's how I know I got the right title, like it has to feel like if I removed this title, like Margaret was just saying, like it wouldn't feel like it has the spirit of the work there. And so if I remove it, it doesn't feel quite right. So yeah, I think it depends though, because you can't really predict the trends.
And even with the, the fantasy title structure, it's still going. Like, I mean, it really blew up in like YA and like even all fantasy or whatever just a couple of years ago, but it's still going strong. So
I agree.
What did you think about the sort of cross-disciplinary thing that I was thinking about? So I know Shannon designs covers. I do not. I don't think you do, right? So do you think that it adds something to have the visual title affect also like how you're making decisions based on the sound? Because you have to sort of take both into account.
I thought that was such a cool point that you brought. I hadn't thought about that, like besides the visual, just the words in the context of a design. So I design covers just like for fun. That's just something that I do for fun. And I've been doing for fun for a couple of years. So while I don't have like the industry knowledge, I definitely think about how words like look like visually in a design. And so I think that's so smart. Like, there are like I've noticed a lot of like one word titles, even in like movies, like the movie on that came out recently, which was Saltburn, right? I don't know if you've seen that, but the font is like a Gothic font.
Yeah.
And like it's very different. Like we haven't really seen that aesthetic so much like for like a more like contemporary movie. And so I think that was kind of cool. And that's what caught my attention when I saw that when that movie came out. So I think design can have like a really big impact on how like a word is perceived. There's a book behind me called Cleanness. This is a gray one. You can't see it, but it's like caught in the corner.
Okay.
And the design of the book is just like a person's back and like the word cleanness on the front. Very reflective of like the title. It's like it's clean, right? The design's very nice and clean. So I think designers would definitely keep that in mind, like the tone of the actual book and the tone of the title. So I think that a good design could be very helpful for titles. And like you were mentioning with author names, like kind of selling, like with Stephen King, for example, that's another example of how maybe the title doesn't matter so much in comparison to the name. So when you get to like maybe that level where your name is bigger than the title, maybe the title doesn't matter so much.
Yeah. And the reason we brought that up is because the girls, to me, I mean, I know Emma Cline has a reputation, but the girls, to me, doesn't say anything about her girlhood, other things. And so we thought, are you using the back cover copy to sort of judge the title? Because I wouldn't have pulled any of that from just the title.
When you had mentioned design, I don't know if you've seen the cover for the girls. I don't know if they've changed it. I don't think so. It's like a face and like it's in her sunglasses. And so it's really cool. Like I think the design was very like it captures. And so I was just at the thrift store before I got here and I was looking and I've seen a ton of books that start with the girls. And so I always am like, is that by Emma Cline? And then it's never by Emma Cline. So I think like the design aspect is actually really true. Like the eye-catching colors, the tone of the actual cover, if you look it up after, it really fits like the book itself. So that's true. Like I think not only like the author name, because that was her debut, and I think she kind of got notoriety like after that book came out, but also the design itself can help.
Okay. It does make me wonder if some people, especially like I pull the K-Lytics reports to look at like, what's selling on, and the K-Lytics are just based on Amazon. So that what's selling in the genre, what subgenres are selling. Then they look at like the top, like 100 consistently covers I've stayed in the top 100 consistently over the last year, the top 100 blurbs. And so anyways, so when I've been pulling the reports for fantasy and fantasy romance for the last couple of years, and the covers that have been gaining more and more momentum are those that are just the title, the typography covers. So I wonder too, if some authors may not choose titles that can lend to a certain type of design for their cover.
I think it's an interesting thing to think about, especially if you are like in more of like the self-publishing realm, because traditional publishing is so slow. So like by the time you title the project, it's gonna be like 4 years. So like the trends change quite quickly. And so I think it's really interesting though to think about, because that's true. I've noticed a lot more fantasy books where it's just the title. I like that design. I think it's quite pretty. So for example, I know on my end, not to bash my own name, but my name is not very symmetrical. Like I have my first name is 6 letters, my last name is 12. And so doing design for my own name is tough. So I can imagine if you didn't have as much visual symmetry between the two words, it might be hard to design a cover with just the words. because it wouldn't look balanced.
Right.
But even if you have like, say for like one of my books is like Soul of a Rose, and there's, you know, that put roses on the cover, like I could have chosen rose to be on there and made it part of the design that is the rose or something like that. I wonder if some people think of things like that.
Oh, that's cool. I think that would be a really neat way to think about titling too. It's not something surprisingly that I have considered, but I think if you're like a really visual person, I think that would be another sort of technique to think about.
Yeah. I'm very visual.
I mean, when you talk about trends too, I think of the original covers for the Outlander series, which is hugely popular, and they were just typography with like one symbol and like, you know, obviously no tie-ins with the series or anything before they were popular, but yeah, and now it's back in with fantasy romance, which is what that is. So, did you have other questions? I think I have one more.
I've got one more, yeah.
Let's see. Surprising. Oh, the book marketing aspect. So like longer titles being easier to find because they're more specific. Does that influence title, or do you think it should? Or for people whose memories aren't going to remember the longer titles, does that outweigh any benefits that you might get from having like a longer search term? What do you think?
I mean, for me, when I come up with a title, like I Google it, right? And so if a whole bunch of search results come up, or, you know, there's many different stories titled that, typically like I might like kind of shy away from that kind of title. And so I think like thinking about like the marketability is interesting when considering a title too, because like some authors might not, like with Emma Klein, like we were talking about, that's just a phrase, you know, like that's
Right.
that you can use in a sentence, right? But I think I like longer titles, but I think it also depends on the context in which you're publishing, and then also like what you're publishing exactly. Like, because I'm Canadian, and like the Canadian literary scene, I've noticed like a lot of like very like specific on the longer end titles, not necessarily long, but like they're medium to longer, and they're very specific. Like, so that's like kind of in line with Canlit being like, to other people who aren't in Canlit, I think Canlit reads as like a little quirky. And so that makes sense. Like as the country's publishing sphere,
Right.
it kind of matches. So I think it depends on where you are. I love like having specific like titles that like will ring something to somebody. If like they keep hearing me say it over and over again, they'll be like,
Yeah.
oh, that story is yours, right?
Yeah.
I like that, but I think it also depends, because some people like it might not be as needed. And I think like trends, like I think in other genres, I'm sure like in romance, there are certain words that like readers would like look for.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Hero, Highlander,
Yeah.
etc.
Or if it comes to like the shifter romances, you know, like,
Right.
you know, yeah.
I bet people are Googling right now, touch her and die, because that's a thing, like
Yes.
a TikTok thing. Yeah. We had an Andy come in. Hello. Cuddled that like button. Good reminder, like the stream, subscribe to all the channels. Rachel Writes' channel is in the description below. Okay, yeah, the example I use is one of those things that will stick in your head. The 100-year-old man that escaped out the window and was never seen again or whatever. Jordan brought up another example that is definitely like unique, which was the incident of the dog in the nighttime, because you're like, what? Like first of its kind, and then has been repeated, that sort of formula since. But yeah, interesting stuff. Just to catch up on some of the chat, I just Googled the girls.
Is it still the same cover? Just curious.
I
I could Google later.
We're also moving from a time with very simple covers for series like the Twilight series. Oh my
Sure.
God, all those black, white, and red covers. I was just like, no, thank you. Or Hunger Games series to ones with swirls of things around people to now covers with scroll work and letters. Yeah, which I like much better, but that's just me. It's subjective.
I wonder if that is not influenced by the invention of, not the invention because it's been around for a while, but AI, because AI can't really do letters. It's very hard for AI to do that. So if you have a cover that has letters into the design, or is she talking about the typography? But even this typography, I mean, AI can't really do the typography. So if you get a cover that has, you know, scroll work and the typography, and it's very, very artistic, you're going to know that's probably not an AI cover.
Oh, see, I didn't know that.
I mean, they are getting to the point where they can do some letters now, but it's not always consistent.
So do you think we're going to have a flash trend of titles with like people with hands that have recognizable fingers to prove they're not AI? Devin saying, I want to do something different for my next series. Not a fan of the current steampunk art or titles. Oh, I like the steampunk titles and art. So yeah, we'll have to agree to disagree on that one.
You want me to ask my last question?
Sure.
So I kind of thought of this as it was going through. So you gave us 10 categories of different titles to think of. If you could add one more, what would it be? Oh, I put her on the spot. We can talk about something else. So you can think about it.
Oh my. Oh gosh, that is such a good one. I don't know. I can't even. I think
Sorry.
the ones that I mentioned. I think. No, I don't know. I don't know. I didn't mention in the category. I didn't mention bleeding titles. That could be one. I mean, that's just one that I want to see more of.
Yeah.
That I don't think a lot of people outside of poetry would probably be aware of. And so even thinking about, because I've heard of this, maybe this is one that we can kind of like sneak in there. It's almost like a little sentence title. I think a prof say this, where it's like you can find a title in the sentence and then like cut out the sentence. From the like take your title from a sentence in like an actual quote from the story, and then just cut out the quote in the story. So that could that's almost like a found title. That's one we could add.
Yeah.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
I like that. But why would you take it out?
I don't know. I don't know if I necessarily agree with the approach. But
yeah.
It's another way. Like I think if for somebody it might be helpful. Maybe there was that one line that never fit. There you go. It's the title.
It was part of the, when you cut your darlings, it was part of that pile.
Yes.
There you go. Well, I'm gonna be giving an opportunity for everyone to let you know where to find you. So I wanted to point out that I didn't do this earlier because I didn't want to like cover faces. Rachel Lachmansingh, subscribe to the channel below. Is there something coming up that is exciting that you want to direct people to? I don't know. See.
I have some poems coming out in a magazine. So if you don't follow me on Instagram, I'll post when it comes out on Instagram. I'm at Rachel X Writes on Instagram, I believe. So very similar to my channel name. So yeah, I publish there. Hopefully I'll have bigger news soon. But I don't know right now. So
Okay.
we'll see what the year brings. But yeah, some poems so far. And then maybe some new videos because I've been inconsistent with those.
I like the live writing sprints and like productivity sort of sit down.
You.
Those have been nice.
Those are fun.
Mm-hmm. Shannon, we had some fun and games and like nerd homework in Rachel's presentation, and that actually reminded me of the series that you're doing for this month that we're halfway through. So tell us a bit about the Charmed Chats for February.
So yes, I've been bringing on fantasy romance authors nearly every day. I have 22 authors altogether coming on, but we are just over halfway at this point where we get to talk about their writing and one of their books and then play a game. And we've had some great games like Would You Rather and Pictionary and Mad Libs, yes. And then we do a happily ever after sprint. So it's called Charm Chats and happily ever after sprints. And so, yeah, we've been having a lot of fun. And the next one's tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern with Jillian Witt.
Nice. So much work, you guys. And just as a reminder, this is part of the AWC roll up, belly up to the bar to get people excited about the conference. Authortube Writing Conference happening June 28th? 29th? Okay, yes. I said it wrong last time, so I went a little hesitant. So get ready, put it on your calendars. Make sure that you're staking out that prime time virtually to join us on the interwebs. You're here on my channel. I'm a historical fiction and fantasy writer. I am working on a new work and I'm going to be travel vlogging about my research process for that soon. So that is the exciting thing in my neck of the woods. And I will duck out of the channel for 1 week, but I will be back. So lovely to have everyone here. Thank you so much for joining. Shannon snuck in Rachel's Instagram there really quick. So that was gorgeous. And yeah, I think that's us. So Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you and talk to you again soon. Happy writing and